Welcome to the Sam the Answer Man podcast. For 30 years, Sam Ventola has been an attorney, hearing officer, professor, and mediator. Now he's here to answer your legal questions. Sam the Answer Man, law made simple. Here's your hosts, Sam and Gina Ventola.
Hi, everybody. I'm Gina.
I'm Sam.
And welcome to the Sam the Answer Man podcast. How you doing, Sam?
Doing really great.
Awesome. So there's a lot in the news lately about the Supreme Court.
Yeah, so they just lost Justice Kennedy, retired, and so now they're considering whether the appointment of Judge Kavanaugh should be confirmed and whether he should be on the Supreme Court.
So what's the problem with him? Because there's a lot of conversation about him.
Well, Justice Kennedy was considered sort of the swing justice of the court.
So that means he was kind of the middle.
Right. And a lot of people are concerned that he's going to be replaced by Mr. Kavanaugh, who they perceive as a lot more conservative. And they're particularly concerned.
So can you hold up for a second? I didn't mean to interrupt, but I need to ask this question. So as far as justices, we hear this all the time in the news, conservative justices, liberal justices, they're all interpreting the Constitution. So what do those terms mean in relation to a Supreme Court justice?
Well, theoretically, they're interpreting the Constitution, but there are people who believe that justices should do more than interpret the Constitution, that they should instead put in policies that these people consider to be beneficial policies, progressive policies, and that judges should impose these policies through court decisions rather than waiting for Congress to make laws. They want to have the justices make those policy decisions rather than legislatures.
And those justices are the liberal ones?
So that's what people call liberal judges. What people tend to call conservative judges are judges who believe in sort of more restrained view of the court, that the court is just there to interpret existing law and is not there to make new law.
So, okay, so now we kind of understand that. So with Justice Kennedy retiring, and he was kind of the neutral party?
The sort of middle vote, yeah.
Okay, so now he's gone because he retired the end of July, is that right?
Yeah.
The end of the session. So tell us, what's the problem with Judge Kavanaugh?
Well, a lot of people, again, perceive him to be too conservative, and they're concerned that if he gets on the court, he will vote to overturn several decisions that are popular among especially liberal people, and that they're concerned that he's not going to follow the doctrine of stare decisis.
Whoa. That's a big term. That sounds like an SAT term. So
it's Latin.
Can you tell us what it means other than it's Latin?
So it means, technically it means let the decision stand. It's a doctrine of the law which says that if a case has already been decided one way, if a legal principle has already been decided one way, then a later court should leave that alone and should not change that in a later decision.
Okay. So I think I got it. So can you tell us why people are so scared of Justice Kavanaugh and stare decisis? Isn't that fun to say?
Well, they're concerned that there are certain decisions, and Roe versus Wade is probably the biggest one that people are thinking about, that they want to make sure don't get overturned. And they're concerned that Justice Kavanaugh, Judge Kavanaugh, if he becomes Justice Kavanaugh, will not follow stare decisis, and he'll become a fifth vote to overturn some of these decisions.
So what's an example of the court applying the doctrine? Is it safe to call it doctrine? Doctrine of stare decisis.
Yeah, well, I mean, there are times that the court applies it, and generally they apply it when they still like the decision that was there. However, generally, when you get 5 justices of the court who decide they don't like a case anymore, stare decisis has never held them back. They've always felt free to go ahead and overturn a decision. In fact, just about a month ago, at the end of the last term, there were 2 decisions decided a week apart where the justices overturned previous longstanding decisions, totally ignoring the idea of stare decisis.
So do you have an example of these?
Well, one of the decisions was the Wayfair case, so it had been the laws of the Supreme Court back since 1967 that a state could not impose a state sales tax on an out-of-state realtor doing business with somebody in state. That was 53 years ago, and people had made their entire business models on the fact that they're not going to get charged sales tax. Well, they just come along this term and
So
say,
now they can.
now they can. The Supreme Court just
So
decided
now
to
you
change
know
their mind.
why, when you see your Amazon bill, they've added sales tax on it.
It's the Wayfair case. Another example,
So wrong.
sort of on the other side of the political spectrum, was the Janus case, where Mr. Janus didn't want to have to pay union dues in order to pay for political activities he didn't like. The Supreme Court had said about 40 years ago that that's perfectly okay. People can be forced to pay those dues even if they didn't like the political things they were going to. The Supreme Court, again by a 5-4 decision, just about a month ago, says, oh, we're just going to change all that, and we're going to overrule that decision, and we're going to prohibit those kinds of payments.
So are there examples of them not following stare decisis?
Yeah, every other case. Basically, they generally follow it, but when they decide that they don't like a case anymore, they'll just stop following it.
So they're consistent in their inconsistency?
Pretty much. I mean, for example, you know, people are concerned about Roe versus Wade. They want to make sure that that's not overturned. But generally, everybody who's in favor of Roe versus Wade was also in favor of overturning Supreme Court decisions decided in 1986, Bowers versus Hardwick, when the Supreme Court decided that states could make homosexual conduct illegal. Now, that was not only overturned in the decision of Lawrence versus Texas, but then a few years ago, the Supreme Court actually said states could not prevent gay marriage. So they went way beyond overturning the decision, way on the other side. No, none of these people who were screaming about stare decisis in defense of Roe versus Wade were heard to complain, oh, wow, you can't overturn Bowers versus Hardwick, we've got to have stare decisis. Whenever people don't like the decision, they're perfectly fine with getting rid of stare decisis.
So is there an example, because that's an example of like a progressive mindset. Do you have a conservative example of that, where an existing case and conservatives?
Well, the Wayfair case, the conservatives generally don't like taxes, and so they wanted to.
So we're like, yay!
They wanted to maintain that decision, but they just got overruled because the court decided we're going to allow that taxation.
So wrong. So wrong. So see, I'm a victim of it too, because.
But my point of it is, if the court was right in the way that this Constitution reads, they should have overturned that decision. You know, the whole doctrine of judicial review of the judges deciding certain cases and statutes would be illegal was established by the case of Marbury versus Madison. And what Justice Marshall said in that case was, he said, you know, we're called upon to enforce the Constitution and we're called upon to enforce statutes. But when we're confronted with a Constitution that says one thing and a statute that says another thing, we have to decide which one to follow. And we always have to go in favor of following the Constitution because the Constitution is supposed to be the supreme law of the land. Well, I would say the same thing applies here. If we've got the Constitution that says one thing and a Supreme Court decision from a prior term that says another thing, and they don't match, you've got to follow the Constitution, not the Supreme Court decision. The Supreme Court decision has no force of law. It's the Constitution that should be followed.
But doesn't that go back to how you view the Constitution as far as the justices, whether they view it?
Well, that's a good point. Yeah. So people who sort of just want the Supreme Court judicial power to be let's make good laws, they'll say, hey, who cares what the Constitution says? Do what we want. But here's the thing. People are in favor of that kind of thing when justices who have their political views are in. But they wouldn't want that if a bunch of conservative justices were in and said, not only are we going to follow the Constitution, we're actually going to go beyond the Constitution and force the enactment of conservative political positions because we don't care about the Constitution. We only want to do what we want to do.
So what would be an example, because you just gave a great example of a progressive viewpoint, what would be a great example of?
Like if the Supreme Court came in and said, hey, you know, you want to impose a lot of taxes in order to pay for health care or pay for this or that. We don't like high taxes, and we're going to decide as a matter of constitutional law the tax rate cannot be over 30% on anybody. The Constitution doesn't say that, okay? If they said that, they would be going beyond the Constitution. But if you really want the justices to decide whatever policies they thought were appropriate, they could decide that policy was appropriate.
So when should the justices apply the doctrine of stare decisis?
In my judgment, never. At least never when they've made a determined decision that the Constitution requires something else. It's the Constitution that has to be followed, not previous Supreme Court decisions.
Well, that's pretty cool. Great information. If you have any questions about that, you can email us at sam@samventola.com. You can contact us on Twitter at at Sam Duh with a D, because the other one was taken, Duh Answerman. And, you know, we've been talking about our fans because, you know, always thinking about you. And we don't know what to call you. So we need your help. So Sam has some ideas.
Samstonians.
And like I said, we really need your help.
Samaritans.
Exactly. This is going to keep on unless you come into our group. So what you have to do is you have to go into our Sam the Answer Man podcast Facebook group and join the group and participate by responding to the question that we put out there about what to call our fans. Because if you don't, he's going to decide, and we have to stop this madness. Okay? I need your help. Please, please help. So with that, thank you for watching our show and listening if you're listening by audio. And we have the best fans. We just don't know what to call you right now. So call us. Let us know. Come into the group. Join the group. You'll get you'll get information in there. But let us know. So thanks for watching.
Thanks. Bye.
If you would like to discuss your legal issue with Sam, please contact Ventola Law at 303-864-9797 or check out our website at www.ventolalaw.com. Ventola Law, mediation and legal representation at an expert level.